All right, opponent process theory. I would recommend you watch this video first, then read in the book perhaps. Well, either way. So this is a theory of emotion that a couple of psychologists came up with to explain particular things that they were noticing. And I have to say, I'm not sure what the more recent research is on it, whether this is supported, but it's a pretty interesting one, and obviously we want you to understand it. So what it says, and there's this graph that you really need to get a handle on, and you've seen it in the book, but we're going to draw one up here. So we're going to graph our emotional feelings, responses to events and stimuli. This is going to be kind of your baseline. Now think about biologically, our bodies try to maintain this homeostatic baseline rate, heart rate, respiration rate, whatever your kind of resting state is. And so they start off assuming, well, perhaps our emotions are the same way, that we might have this sort of baseline rate of our typical, are you typically a kind of a happy person, or are you a little bit more, lethargic or calm, or sort of maybe even saddish personality? Like you have some sort of baseline emotional rate when you're just kind of going through your day. What's your regular thing? And then things happen to us, events happen, and our emotions change, right? We go, oh, something makes us happy or excited, or it's nice, or something's like, oh, a bummer, or really depressing, or, and as our emotions get elicited to go away from our baseline, what they propose is our body would work to bring us back down to our normal level. And what they thought happens, maybe, is that something elicits an emotion, and then in order to bring us back down to baseline, an opposing opposite emotion is triggered by the first emotion. So an event happens, you have an emotion, and then because that emotion started, it in turn is a stimulus that elicits the opposing emotion. The first one we're going to call the A process, the second one is the B process. But the idea is they're opposing emotions. So let's say an event happens right here, and this is like time, okay? So the event, and it can be something that makes you happy or sad. And just because the graph is going up, it doesn't mean, oh, you're happy. It could be something that makes you sad. So let's say you find out that your company is going to be laying some people off, and you're nervous about this because you could be one of those people. So your A process kicks in. All right, so this is A. And that's your emotional response to this event. You hear, oh my gosh. And this is just, it takes a little bit of time. I mean, it might just be seconds or minutes that it takes it to be like, oh my gosh, they're laying people off. I could be one of those people. So here's the A process. Now, once you start feeling that, they're saying, well, okay, so your body kicks in to try and counteract that feeling, and that's our B process. So, here's B. And this A process is going to be active as long as the event is continuing. So let's say, it's a few days or even a few weeks, let's say it's a week, whatever, that you're under this threat of, oh my gosh, I might lose my job. And then you find out, no, you're okay. So that eliciting event stops, it turns off. It's like that stimulus is taken away. Or you might be laid off, oh, you're not going to, so we take it away. At that point, your A emotion would also stop. Okay. But your B emotion is still in process, and once A stops, then B is going to decay and stop itself. The thing about the B process in this theory is that it's a little bit slower to stop, and it lasts a little bit longer. So we have our response to the news. You might get laid off. It's like, oh, I feel terrible. That kicks in the opposing emotion, which would be some kind of happiness. And so happiness takes a little longer. Now here's the key. Let me find that other marker. Here it is. Okay. What we actually feel is going to be the combination of whatever's going on in our body. So when we first get the news, there's only the A process working. So we feel, nervous or afraid or whatever your reaction is. And it's all A. However, once B kicks in, then the two are added together, and we feel something that mathematically it's going to look something like this. That's pretty. Once B comes in, it kind of pulls down A, and we still feel nervous, but not as nervous as when we first heard, okay? Now, we're still more nervous than baseline. And then what happens when A stops? Well, basically, now we're all B. And if in this scenario, B, opposing process, is happy, we're like, woo, extra happy when we find out we're not getting laid off. And then that lasts for a little while, and it decays, and we're back to our regular old selves, okay? So what you need to understand about this graph is that there's two opposing emotions, and whatever the emotion is to the event that happens, B is going to be the opposite of that emotion. And then B takes longer to decay. And what you feel is in this graph, the green, or in the dotted line is what your book graph will look like, is the combination of those two. Whatever's happening at the same time, you feel the combination. So I want you to be able to handle, like, take a scenario and figure out where would we be in this scenario. So let's say I have a question where I say, well, John's friend was going to come visit, and John was, he called up and said, hey, I'm going to come visit this weekend. And so John was excited when he heard that, right? And when he first heard it, he was really excited. And then after a day or so after the phone call, he was still excited, but not as excited as when he first heard his friend say, yeah, I'm going to be there. So if we're at the part in the story where John's still excited, but not as much as when he first got the phone call, where are we on the graph? Well, we're going to be somewhere here. We've had enough time for John's opposing process to kick in. So he's still excited, more than his normal level of excitement, but not when he first heard. When he first heard, he was like, awesome, this is going to be great. Oh, you're coming for the weekend. And then after a few hours or a day or so, he's like, yeah, my friend's coming. I'm still excited, but it's not like the initial excitement. Then he gets a call from his friend last minute. He goes, I forgot I had this paper due. I can't come visit you. And then the excitement stops completely, and what's left? The opposing process of, I'm sad. So I'm sad for a while, and it'll last for a while, and then it'll decay back to like normal self, okay? This is one reason we think about, like, people that win the lottery have these amazing things happen to them, or people who have really horrible things happen to them, like they lose a limb or something in combat, or, for most people, it has an immediate, obviously, effect on them. But over the long term, they end up being pretty much the same they were, their personality and their emotions, as they were before the event. So, if you were kind of down in the dumps and you won the lottery, well, that wouldn't really change a lot about you. You'd still be kind of a sort of person eventually. If you're a pretty positive, optimistic person before something tragic happened to you, eventually you'll still probably be that optimistic person, even though you had this terrible event happen to you. Opponent process does look at that. Now, let's think about if some event happens to you over and over. If we have the same thing presented to us over and over, what happens is the B process becomes classically conditioned. It starts to learn, and it will start to kick in sooner and get stronger. So let me get back to my blue marker. So like if you won the lottery over and over, the first time you're like, oh, and the second time you're like, oh, this is crazy, twice, and the third time, and then like it happened, and every day you'd be like, yeah, well, it happens. You get used to it. What's happening is your B process is getting quick at like counteracting that excitement. So each time, just draw a few lines, it might get sooner and stronger to the point where you're like, wow, oops, okay. Now think about this. I promised you a heroin story, right? Okay. Here's the thing. People that tend to maybe overdose on heroin, unless it was a bad bag or something, there are these occasions when people will be taking their normal dose of heroin and they will overdose. And they'll be like, well, that's kind of weird because you've taken that much before and it was fine, but what's going on this time? And what happens is usually it's because they're taking it in a new location, in a new situation. So think about this. Somebody's a heroin user, and there's lots of famous examples of these kinds of overdoses. As they continue to take the heroin over and over, heroin's going to have a particular effect on your body, physiological response. Now, I will note for you biology people, which should be every psychology person, these processes map on pretty well to our autonomic nervous system, where we have a sympathetic nervous system. Is the fight or flight, kind of gets fight or flight, gets you jazzed up. And the parasympathetic system is the one that kind of calms you down. That may be, and we know emotions have a very physiological, component, may be what would drive this. So say heroin elicits a certain physiological response. Your body's going to try and counteract that with the B process, right? So if you take heroin over and over, the B process is going to get sooner and stronger. Now, classical conditioning actually happens. There are conditioned stimuli that predict your body's about to get a heroin injection. What would those be? Well, it could be where you take the drug, who you take it with, the environment. Is there certain music playing? Is there certain, we're hanging out on the pillows with our lava lamps and about to shoot up, or we're in the alley with my dealer, whatever, wherever you normally take your heroin. Your body becomes conditioned, the B process, and it can expect the actual getting the stuff ready, mixing it up and getting my syringe out. All that stuff tells your body through classical conditioning, it learns, like, I'm going to have this challenge. So as the B process kicks in, you could handle more and more drug without giving yourself a heart attack, because physiologically you're prepared. So now you're somewhere different. You're at a brand new nightclub with somebody you just met, complete stranger, like, hey dude, you want to shoot up? Yeah, okay. So we go to this weird restroom. I've never been here. I don't know you. And I'm like, oh, this is what I usually take. Because the B process hadn't kicked in to prepare you for that drug challenge, because your normal conditioned stimuli weren't around. You weren't in your normal place with your normal people doing your normal thing. You were somewhere new, no conditioned stimuli, B process hadn't kicked in, so the dose you give yourself, and it's all over. So that's the heroin story with opponent process. I have another story, but I think I might put it on your exam and have you guys explain it. So your challenge is to make sure you understand opponent process theory. Not really that complicated. There are just a few moving parts here. And ask me questions if you need to. Post questions on Blackboard, and other students can answer them too. Understand it, because you're going to have to explain it in an essay on your week exam. All right. Hope that does it for you.